Um, boom. And I think we are live. So we're gonna give it maybe to 10:04. And then we will and then we'll go forth. So we're gonna give it maybe to 10:04.
There you go.
Oh, can you hear that?
Yes.
Let me turn the volume down. So Limia, right? Am I pronouncing that properly?
Yeah, Limia.
Perfect. Last thing I want to do is broadcast. Granted, it's not like we're being seen by thousands of people all at one time, but you know, I still want to make sure that I do my due diligence and pronounce your name right. Last week we had Lee from Men Stopping Violence, and and he was an Italian last name, and I'm like, Lee, I love you, brother. I'm gonna let you. I'm just gonna let you say your last name because the last thing I want to do is butcher it on Facebook. So yeah. So hey, we're live. I'm excited once again. This is gonna be a really cool conversation because you know, far too often I think when we think about domestic violence, I think we talk about it in the framework of it only happens in that community or this community. And what we really try to highlight today with our conversation is that domestic violence is one, it's global, but it also impacts people regardless. Lemmy and I were talking in kind of pre-show about how it doesn't discriminate at all. It affects people of all cultural backgrounds, of all socioeconomic statuses. And so today, I think I say this every time we do this, but I am genuinely excited because this is an important conversation. So today we're going to be talking about simply the impact of domestic violence on immigrant and refugee communities. Again, our hope for you to see today is that it is affecting you. It does affect you regardless of whether or not it's happening in your house, but it's affecting your neighbors. It's affecting where the kids that your children go to school with. And so I think if we can have a broader conversation like this, it does make us more empathetic to what's happening around us. So I have my rock star helper and rock star host, Miss Samantha Macedo. Samantha, please introduce yourself and tell us what you do for PADV.
I get to be a rock star today. That's great.
You're a rock star every day.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Macedo. I am the Vice President of Prevention and Outreach for Partnership Against Domestic Violence.
And then our special guest today is from Tapestry, and I'm not going to I'm going to let her introduce herself, but I also want you to tell us a little bit about Tapestry as well. So Limia, take it away. Tell us about yourself and what do you do for Tapestry?
Hi, thank you. Good morning. My name is Limia Obadi, and I'm the Domestic Violence Program Director at Tapestry. Tapestry is a nonprofit organization, and we work with victims of domestic violence and human trafficking. We mainly work with the immigrant and refugee communities. Our main thing is we use culturally competent and linguistically appropriate ways to serve our clients. So we serve all immigrant and refugees, and we have different programs. We have the domestic violence, we have the human trafficking program, we have the men's program, and we have unaccompanied minors.
See, this is why I'm excited, because just hearing you talk about the organization, and I've been with PADV for 4 years, and there's still so much I don't know. And every time I talk to Sam, I realize how much I don't know. And I'm okay with that. But my first question and is not one of the ones I sent you. Of course it's not. But you talked about Tapestry working with domestic violence victims. You talked about them working with trafficking victims. You talked about, and there was one other.
Men's program.
The men's program, and then there was one more after that.
The
unaccompanied minors.
There we go. Perfect. So my first question is, how much overlap really do you see between the domestic violence folks that come in seeking help, and then also the trafficking? Do you see a lot of overlap in that space of your work?
Yes, we do a lot. We see a lot of overlap between the domestic violence and the human trafficking. We always have to screen and see which is the best way to go forward, because most of the time we see overlap with the two departments. But with the unaccompanied minors, not so much. We just do mostly home visits and stuff like that. We don't have a lot of clients, but we work with minors as well, but not that much with the unaccompanied minors. We do also do intakes and do counseling for them to talk about domestic violence as well, but nothing so far, which is good. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm sorry, you know, I always send out for the world, and I always try to send out, hey, here are the questions that I probably will ask. But Lemia hit me right off the bat with a thought that I was not prepared for. And so a lot of this is just us as an organization sharing with the world what we're doing. But for me, I am genuinely learning. And so most of the time these guys hit me with something and I'm like, oh man, I want to know more. So you guys are getting my random moment. Sam, looks like you got something to say here.
No, I was gonna add that you bring up a great point, because you know, often these issues are addressed in silos, but they're overlapping issues. And so that's why partnerships like ours with Tapestry is so important.
See, you know, Sam, you jumped right into to the first question, and I think you probably did that on purpose to keep us on track, which is okay. Could you talk about how the two organizations work together?
So Tapestry is a great partner, as I just mentioned. We have collaborated on a couple of things. We've collaborated on our candlelight vigil that we do annually. In fact, Lemia received recognition at our last candlelight vigil. She's an excellent advocate. And the organization in itself is a great advocacy organization. We work together in our Gwinnett Legal Advocacy Program because they, as you guys were talking in the pre-show, they have a lot of advocates that speak different languages. And Gwinnett, being one of the most diverse counties, does have a lot of language needs for survivors. And so those are, you know, just a couple of examples in which we've worked. Lemia, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else, but again, you know, there's such a great partnership here, and that's why we wanted to bring them. But so essentially, again, like we said, you know, sometimes there are overlapping issues, with some of the advocates that Tapestry has that speak different languages, they're able to provide advocacy in that language to those survivors, as well as, you know, culturally competent advocacy.
I love that. I love that phrase, and both of you guys have used it. Like literally, we've been live for maybe less than 5 minutes. Or it's actually, the phone says 8 minutes, but either way, both of you guys have used that phrase, culturally competent. Missing a word here, but it's so. I mean, obviously, you can tell it's important because literally in the 8 minutes that we've been talking, both of you guys have kind of referred back to making sure that we're providing culturally competent services. So that's amazing, and I hope that as survivors who may be immigrants or refugees, if they're watching this today, that they hear that and they understand that there's true love and empathy coming from both organizations. So Lemia, could you tell us a little bit about Tapestry's work as it relates to domestic violence?
Sure. Let me touch base on how our collaboration with PADV works as well. Because we don't have shelters, so we don't have a physical shelter, so we have to work with other agencies, and PADV has been excellent. I mean, they've been housing our clients, they've been helping them with support groups, counseling, and we've been working collaboratively really well, and we truly appreciate your services. We truly appreciate your partnership. I mean, we've been working with PADV and other shelters for a long time. And like you said, Gwinnett County being the most diverse, We've been having a lot of clients from Gwinnett County, and there's a lot of assistance that we needed, and you were really helpful. So for us, it's different because we're not only in one county, we work throughout the whole Georgia, Metro
Wow.
Atlanta specifically. But we also get referrals from shelters out in White County, Paulding County, Jackson, Athens out there. So we work with a lot of victims from different counties. So we have to really have good relationships and do a really good job putting our services and outreach out there. Mostly just making people aware of what the barriers are, what the challenges are for immigrants. I mean, victims, domestic violence victims face a lot of barriers just like that. But with immigrants and refugees, there's additional barriers, mainly their immigration status, that will be language access, and also having the different cultural practices. So it's really important for us to really create awareness and educate and do a lot of outreach. So we go beyond Metro Atlanta when we do our trainings and stuff like that.
You were telling me earlier that you guys service, and just from the domestic violence perspective, you service clients from 45 different countries.
Yes.
In 2019.
Yeah, 2019, we served a total of 137 clients, and they come from 45 countries, and they speak over 30 languages. So what we do is...
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What we do is we do provide comprehensive case management. So when we have clients and we work with victims, survivors, we work with them for a long time. We work with them minimum of 3-4 years. We have clients that have been with us for over 7-6 years. And that's mainly because immigration status and their paperwork takes a long time. So we have to work with that client, and not as an emergency safety ways, but we work with them, moving them from the crisis to a more stable and more secure life, where we see them growing and where we see them having, accomplished what they wanted to when they started. So what we do is we utilize what we call the victim-centered approach. So we work with those clients, with those victims or survivors, and work through a plan where they're able to accomplish what they want. But the main thing is we try to move them from crisis to stability.
Gosh, this is blowing my mind, because again, I love these things so much because I get to learn so much. Sam, one of the things that jumped out at me when Lemia was talking, when she started talking about the challenges that all survivors face, but that there are intrinsically more challenges that immigrant and refugee survivors face. Can you talk about kind of what makes it more challenging, and then what are some of those challenges, if that makes sense?
For the immigrant community, some of the challenges can be limited English proficiency. As you know, I migrated to the US myself when I was younger, and not knowing the language, not knowing how systems work here, like where do you go for help, not knowing what are your rights as you're experiencing the abuse. You may not know, again, what are your rights, but also you are being misinformed by your abuser about what your rights are and what help is available to you. I know we hear from our clients who are immigrants who say that their abuser said, if you call the police, they're gonna send you home, they're gonna deport you, and you'll never see your children again, or like if you call the police, they're never gonna do anything. So there's already, as an immigrant, police may work differently in your home country, and laws may be different in your home country, and then you come here and not knowing at all how not knowing at all how things work. You do have some preconceived notions about what is available. In addition to that, you have an abuser who's telling you, misinforming you about what is, what are your rights and what's available to you. There's those cultural differences that can add to the barriers, the challenges an immigrant survivor is facing, as well as I mentioned, the language, the lack of language proficiency. And also, sometimes we forget that faith can be a barrier in the sense of how faith communities respond to the abuse. They can be a great resource. And I think last Friday we had a great conversation about how faith communities can be a great resource and can appropriately respond to domestic violence. But sometimes they can also be a roadblock to safety for survivors. So those are just some of the things. Sometimes when I mentioned, the not knowing about the laws, not knowing about what are your rights, regardless of your status, you have rights, and there are, you have the right to feel safe at home. You have the right to be safe at home. Regardless of your status, there are some resources for you. So I think those are some of the main misconceptions that that we continuously try to break in the immigrant communities.
This is awesome. Thank you, Sam. And I do want to make sure that folks know that if there's questions that they have, they can just take a moment, drop them in the comment section, and I will ask them to you guys.
There was one more thing I forgot to mention.
Go ahead. Perfect.
As an immigrant, you sometimes don't have your support network here at home. So your family may be at home, and so that adds to that isolation piece and the feeling like there's nowhere to go for help. Because if you don't have your mom, your dad, your siblings, where would you go, right? That could understand what you're going through. So I'm assuming
that's why Tapestry works so well and why the process may take so long for some survivors, and that's why Tapestry works with them for so long, is because you're helping to build that community. Is that a fair assessment for me to make?
Yes, and also it's part of us building the relationship with that person, with that survivor, because we want them to trust us, because we would be the only person that they know that's out there to help them. But again, they won't trust us because they don't know who we are. And we have to develop that relationship. We have to get their trust. And then we'll be able to help them out.
Man, thank you guys so much for just jumping on this today with me. So Lemia, one of the questions I have for you is, how can the community better support survivors that may be refugee or immigrants?
So I think the main thing that they can support is by supporting Tapestry's mission and our work. That will be mostly by volunteering their time, by donating to our organization. But also, if you speak a different language, or you're capable, you're bilingual or trilingual, we would definitely use your help, because we use volunteer interpreters most of the time. That would be great. For that, we do train volunteers, like the community members and stuff like that. We train them about domestic violence. We train them about the confidentiality and what domestic violence looks like in the immigrant and refugee communities, all about, DV and stuff, just so they're comfortable. So that's one of the few things that the community can help. And just making sure that you share Tapestry information. If you see anybody, a neighbor, we have so many clients that were referred to us by their neighbors, or somebody that heard about us in their church, or when they went out to a community event in a health centers or whatever. And even if you don't use that, you share it with somebody that would need it. So that's a great help.
Yeah, that's so true. In the immigrant community, at least in my culture, word of mouth referral is a lot more valuable than, 10,000 posts by Jeffrey Brown.
We've been in communities where we have outreach events where people are, oh, no, it doesn't happen in my community. I'm like, just know about it. It's fine. It's not for you. your neighbor or somebody you see on the street, that would come in handy and they would listen. I mean, that's all we need. We just need a listening ear and them to be aware that we provide those services.
I have a question, and I don't care who answers it, honestly. Either one of you guys. How do we break down the barriers that may exist, the cultural barriers, right? Because there are, if I'm trying to work with someone from an African country, or if I'm working with someone from India, how do you guys, or how do we better help kind of break down those barriers to let them know, hey, our organizations, whether it's Tapestry or PABV, like, we're here to support survivors, and we're going to do it in a very in a culturally sensitive way. So how do we better break down barriers?
For us, it's mostly, being out there, and all victims, regardless of where they come from, they need help. They need to feel safe. So if we provide that safety, if we provide them with that assistance, if we tell them, okay, we're going to help you, this is how it's going to be. But I think the best approach that's been working for me personally is making sure I listen to what they want. I don't want to say, oh, this is what we're going to do. I want it to come from them. So I explain what the process is. I explain to them what their options are and what's legal and not legal in the US, regardless of what's happening in the home country or what happened back home, and what's legal over there might not be legal over here. So we have to explain that domestic violence is illegal here and they have options. And everybody that you talk to, most of the victims, shelters are like a no-go for them, because they feel like shelters are like camps, like everybody is in just one room, and they have a distorted vision of domestic violence shelters. So we have to explain about what domestic violence shelters look like. We have to tell them this is what it is, about how it's set up and stuff like that. And their other issue is leaving the house and going to a shelter is a taboo for them, because they feel like they're imposing. And some cultures also feel like they don't want the help. They want to do it on their own. They feel like they're imposing or being a burden on us. And we have to explain, this is services that are provided for victims like you. So it's not a problem. You don't have to pay. You don't have to feel bad about it. This is services that are out there just for this purpose. So it's a lot of different cultures that you have to work through. I mean, like you said, working with a survivor from Kenya is different from working with someone from India, because they have two different cultural backgrounds and ways of dealing with issues. I don't know, Sam, you want to add?
No, you touch on everything I thought I was saying. From constant education, meeting the client where they are, being culturally competent. It's all of that. I think it also we also have to educate third parties and other partners in the community as well, so that they can help us deliver the message. Sometimes I know that there are we get calls, and our partners are reaching out to say, hey, I've got from my after school program a person who is feeling ambivalent, because and it's you can tell that like Lemia was saying, it's just for that person, it's not about coming to the shelter at all. It's that is the absolute last option. And I think for some of our clients, I think they've realized that things are not good at home, and they don't know what else to do, so they may come to our support group because someone told them, a neighbor, or a friend, someone at church, told them about a support group, and then they come, and that's when we start, like Limiam said, some of the education about breaking down some of those misconceptions, and talking about what are the different resources available to them.
So Sam, you touched on support groups, and I want to give you a second. If somebody wants to get involved with a support group, how do they do that?
So to attend the support groups, right now, all of our support groups are being held, virtually. So we're not meeting in person, just to respect some of the social distancing guidelines that we have. So we are meeting virtually. There are a couple of, because we are meeting virtually, we opened up a couple of support groups for new people. One of them is in the afternoon and the other one is in the morning. And all they have to do is call our crisis line, 404-873-1766, and they'll be referred to an advocate for an assessment, and then they can, find out more information about it.
That's awesome. Do you feel like that service is really one of the most important things we do to helping break down those barriers about what support they can receive from both of our organizations?
I think support groups are a great way to, to receive some support. When we talked about earlier about some of the survivors don't have really that community where they can feel heard, they can feel validated. A lot of times through that experience of abuse, the abuser has told them that they're crazy, they don't, that it's their fault, that they brought it onto themselves. And so the support group is a safe space for others to share what their experiences are. Now, some of them are farther along in their journey of recovery than others. And I think that's helpful too, for new folks that are coming in to see, I can be that person, because that person experienced something similar, and define that common ground. I think support groups can be often understated, in their value. Of course, working with immigrant populations, that a lot of times we have to connect them to, an immigration attorney to seek some of that, some of those resources and relief. So that takes care of one part of, the survivors, array of issues that they have going on. And so support group is another place in which they can start, that emotional healing, that emotional safe place to talk about what happened to them.
Thank you, Sam. Let me have one question for you. And I also, before I get to that, I do want to make sure that that folks watching today know that if they do have questions, they can drop them in the comment section, or if they just want to say anything, definitely drop it in the comment section. And I will be more than happy to ask either Sam or Limia. If so, you can direct your questions specifically to either one of them or just the group, because we want to make sure that, yes, I do have a series of questions that I hope kind of drive information and drive the message that we want, that the organizations want to share, but we do want to make sure that we're speaking directly to the people. So if you guys have questions that you want us, or topics that you want us to talk about, please let us know. We're happy to have that conversation with you today. So let me, the question I have for you next is, how do abusers use a victim's immigrant status against them?
So abusers' main thing is power and control, right? So immigration is something that they are in control of, literally, because once an abuser brings a partner, a spouse from another country, like married, so the process is he brings her here, they have to live. It literally takes about 3 to 5 years for her to have her own green card and a permanent paper. So once they come here, he's in control because they have to file, and he's the one that's knowledgeable about the process. So I'm saying he because most of our clients are
definitely
majority. But so during that time, if there's something happen, the abuser would be like, I'm not going to complete the application, or I'm going to hold off. I have to see how you're going to react, or I want you to behave in order for me to do that. Or they don't want to complete the application because they feel like if they do, then she has power and she's going to leave. So there's a lot of misconceptions with that. But in 94, Congress enacted the VAWA, which gives survivors the ability to file immigration paperwork on their own as if there is domestic violence for victims of crime. So we have the VAWA, we have the U visas, we have the spousal waiver. So victims don't have to stay in that abusive relationship anymore, but they wouldn't know because the abusers would make them believe that if they do, they're going to be illegal or they have to be deported. So fear of immigration status is one of the main things that keeps victims in an abusive relationship. And abusers know it, and they do take advantage of them. They brainwash them with things like, oh, if you call the police, you don't have an ID, they wouldn't believe you. You don't speak English. They wouldn't know what you're talking about. They would trust me because I'm a US citizen. But again, the concept of, oh, if you do that, the kids are US citizens probably, so they're going to stay with me. You're going to go back to your country. But then if you go back to the country too, there would be altercation where there would be like threats like, oh, you go back there and I'll take care of you back home, kind of.
Yeah. I know that sometimes I've heard from survivors to say their abuser has destroyed the documents, and then that kind of stalls the immigration process, or like they botched some of the immigration process for them because of that power and control that Lemia mentioned. Sometimes I've heard from survivors say that, financial abuse was also part of that, using their legal status against them, so that when the abuser, is not providing, is not moving forward with that process so that the survivor can have, a work permit or something like that. And they're also including that some of that financial abuse piece where, they may be forcing or cornering the survivor to work under the table. And then they say, if you call the police, I'm going to tell them you're working under the table. So it's just, it is all interconnected, and it is very cyclical.
So we do have a question in the comment section, and Sam, I'll direct it to you real quick. What is a U visa? And why is it so challenging to attain one?
So there's a couple of options, immigration relief options available for survivors of domestic violence. And Lemia mentioned them earlier. VAWA is one of the options. And I'm not an immigration attorney, so I'm just going to give you the overview version of it. But there are, VAWA is one of the options. The U visa is another option. The U visa is available for those who are victims of crime and who have collaborated with law enforcement, because it's all to incentivize victims of crime to actually report crimes, because that makes our communities safer. When we have perpetrators who are being held accountable for their crimes and they're not continuing on to commit other crimes that affect our communities. So that's the reason why the U visa is available, to incentivize victims of crime to come forward, to collaborate with law enforcement, and that means, a couple of things, from filing a report to sometimes testifying in that crime hearing, but it's an option available for victims of domestic violence, as well as trafficking victims. It's one of the options.
So U visas have a list of crimes that qualify. There's over 10 crimes that qualify under the U visa. I'm a Department of Justice accredited rep at Tapestry, which means I file immigration applications for the survivors that we serve. So I do a lot of immigration applications at Tapestry.
So are there any challenges that survivors may face when trying to get a U visa?
Yes, for the U visa, you have to have some sort of law enforcement involvement. So if there was no crime reported, or if the survivor did not call the police, or if she called the police and then retracted saying, I don't want him to be arrested and stuff like that, then it would be hard to get this U visa certificate, because the main thing to do is to be helpful and to help with the prosecution. But then again, a lot of law enforcement agencies also don't know about U visas, so we have to do a lot of education and advocacy in that aspect to talk to them about what a U visa is. We've been doing this since 2009, I think, since whatever, but we're still doing it, and people don't really know about a U visa, and they're really reluctant to sign that form to say that the victim was helpful, or the victim was involved in the prosecution of the crime that was reported.
You know, it's interesting to me that, because you guys brought up, and this is an amazing question, and I'm trying to unpack this for myself as well. But if one of the key elements of attaining a U visa is working with the law, right? Working with the police or working with whoever to prosecute the crime. But the idea of working with the law may be hard for immigrants to believe, because that's also a tool that the abuser will use against the hey, if you call the police, they're going to come, they're going to take you away, they're going to deport you, they're going to take the kids. So why would I even go down the road of attaining a U visa if I've been told for the better portion of my relationship with this abuser that if I call the police, I'm going to be deported, right? And so if I hear that so much, doesn't that inherently make the process for attaining a U visa that much harder? Did I say that? I just want to, did I say that the right way? Because this seems like a very convoluted process that would it's frustrating me. So, and I have no issue with the legal system. So it has to frustrate survivors of domestic violence. Am I wrong in that?
No, you hit it in the nose.
Okay.
It is, but legally, if you are a victim, you should not be arrested or deported, because you're, as a victim, that wouldn't apply to you. Most of the time, or probably back in the days.
It seems, it's interesting, because it seems like we've come so far as both of our organizations. We do awesome work. But then, when I hear you guys talk, it strikes me that there's still so much work that we have left to do in educating the community, whether it's immigrant or non-immigrant, right? There still seems like there's so much work that we have to do to educate them on the resources and the power that they do have. Am I correct in that?
Yes, like you mentioned, it is a big challenge, because if we are coming into that survivor's life at an earlier point, in which again they're starting to look for what is the help available, we can help educate them and try to break down that fear of law enforcement, and educate, of course, the community about that as well. Like Lemia mentioned, it is, the U visa is a process to keep our community safe, and that's the role that we can play to help break down those myths. The U visa is an immigration relief, but you're not making that decision on whether this person is justified in getting status or not. The immigration office, the federal immigration office, is making that decision. The only thing you're doing is saying that, yeah, this person collaborate with law enforcement to, again, keep our community safe.
So Sam, is there an education piece that we're doing as an organization to educate police officers and educate those in law enforcement about the process of obtaining a U visa?
So constantly, it is as Lemia mentioned, it's an ongoing, because we have good partnerships, but then we also have new officers. Right. So it's just a constant education. I think it is important to create those key contact partnerships, and there are other options in which you can show that you've collaborated with law enforcement, but the main part of that is that calling the police, making a report, being part of that criminal justice process. And like you mentioned, if someone didn't do any of that, and they're still in need of other resources, then it's kind of then it becomes a little, we're now trying to backtrack and try to figure out what are the options available. But yeah, it's just constant education and partnerships.
So once again, I blame you both, because this conversation is only supposed to be 30 minutes long, 20 or 30 minutes long, and we're at 40 minutes already. And I just keep having more and more questions that I want to ask you. But I do want to encourage, if you guys are still watching and you do have a question, let us know, because ultimately we're here to serve as a resource for the community, and we're happy to answer those questions. But I do have a question. I personally have one more question for both of you. I'll start with you. What's the greatest need for immigrant or refugee survivor today?
Really, it's getting the resources out there. The needs are resources. It's safety, it's justice. So how do we get that to those victims? It's us putting our resources out there, doing a lot of outreach and stuff like this, I think would be really good as well, because most people do have Facebook, and I think those interactions. But again, like I said, we have to reach out, we have to provide resources and a lot of outreach and trainings. And one more thing I want to add is, we're not only working with the victim. I think we always worked under the umbrella where we have to have a coordinated community response, because only Tapestry or only PADB cannot help a victim. We have to have a more bigger response team, meaning we have to work with the criminal justice system, we have to work with the courts, we have to work with long-term housing sections, we have to work with the schools, with counselors, with mental health. We have to cover a whole bigger multi-sectional, we have to do a multi-sectional approach so we can help that one survivor, but it's a community effort. So I always say we have to keep on having more partners. We have to maintain those partnerships and have a bigger network in order for us to really do our job.
So I did have a question for Sam, but we have another question in the comment section that I'd like to ask both of you, or ask one of you, doesn't matter. But what's being done to address kind of the language access for survivors? Big question. For
us, we have developed outreach materials. We have outreach in about 17 or 18 languages. We have outreach where it talks about what resources are there, or how to identify as a victim. We have a few questions that the front is one language and the back is always English. So whoever gets it would know what language it is, and you have the English section in the back. We distribute those for free to a lot of agencies, to the courthouse, to law enforcement, to different shelters, to health clinics and churches and stuff like that. We do a lot of distribution for those. In addition, we have a leaflet with different languages. It's a booklet kind of thing, which we developed with DeKalb County and Raksha and other agencies to give to law enforcement. So if a police officer has that, he has to just show the victim the book, and she can just point to the language, because that language is written in that specific language, and then he would know what language to request assistance for.
Those cards are so important for law enforcement to have. I cannot emphasize strongly enough that it's so important to have those cards. So I'm very thankful for Tapestry for doing that. PADB has a language access plan in our organization. It is a work in progress. I think that's always that we're when we created our language access plan, we decided that it was going to be a living document, and it was always going to, we were always going to, constantly assess the needs of those language access points. For us, I know it means that, we do have a couple staff that speak Spanish. There are more languages than Spanish though. And we do have some more documentation that we use in the shelter and in our community outreach advocacy. We have it in Spanish translated as well. We do have a language line service that we use whenever we encounter folks who have other language needs. But yeah, our language access plan is a living document, so we're always trying to work on it and make it better.
Is it also fair for me to say that regardless of your language, don't let that be a barrier to you picking up the phone and calling either Tapestry or PADV, right? Like regardless of the issue, regardless of the language, still pick up the phone and call us, regardless of the organization, because if you're in need of service, then we'll figure out how to serve you. Is that a fair statement for me to make?
Definitely. And legally, anybody that gets federal money is supposed to provide language access, so they have to know that too.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Lemia said it earlier, probably in the pre-show. I mean, domestic violence does not discriminate. So regardless of, where you're coming from, what language you speak, what religion you exercise, there are resources for you.
So I once again, man, this has been an awesome conversation for me, because I'm open and always transparent that this is one of the things that I probably didn't know enough about, and you guys have done an awesome job of sharing with me and sharing with everybody that's seen it, watched today, in the most basic form, in the most digestible way, information about what each organization is doing to support survivors that are immigrants and refugees. So I appreciate both of you, Sam and Lemia, for taking your time this morning to just come on and share that information. So thank you both. I do want to make sure that I share with the world Tapestry's phone number. I did pin it in the comment section, 404-299-2185, so that if somebody who does want to reach out to Tapestry, let's not do it for lack of information. And I'll share the website for Tapestry. They are an amazing organization, and so if there's something that they can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to them. All of the information is right here on their website, easy to navigate. I love the feature here at the top of select the language. And then obviously built into most domestic violence websites is this exit safely. And so obviously if there's a situation where you need Tapestry, please feel free to reach out. Their number's right there at the bottom of the screen, and it's pinned to the comment section. And then obviously if you need PADV, our website is here, padv.org. If there's something that we can do for you as a survivor, again, you can reach out to us and call our crisis line 24 hours a day, 404-873-1766. But again, our website's here, and everything that you would need as a survivor, whether it's safety planning or a crisis line, is all right there for you. So I do want to thank Sam and Lemia for jumping on today. Our next conversation will be on Friday, where we will be joined. Yes, sorry. That would happen to somebody eventually. But we will be joined Friday by friends from Mercy Care. So come back 10 a.m. on Friday. We're gonna be, like I said, we're gonna be joined by our friends at Mercy Care, where we're gonna be discussing domestic violence and its impact on our health. Or impact on survivors' health. And so that's going to be an amazing conversation. Sam with a tripod will be back Sam will be back with us, as well as a friend from Mercy Care. So again, thank you everybody for watching today. Please take a second and share this video if you found any nugget of information helpful. I think both Lemmy and Sam said that the only way we work as an organization is by word of mouth. And so share this video, tag somebody who really needs to get this information, But we appreciate you both. Any last words, Sam, Lemia?
Thank you very much. We truly appreciate it.
Yes,
hey, we appreciate y'all. And again, for all those watching today, thank you so much. Share this video. We appreciate you guys. Love you. Have a great day. Bye.